righty, I would like to adjourn the Board of Education closed session at 7:11 and convene the regular board meeting at the same time. Selene, would you like to lead us in the pledge? You could say no.
Muted again, I'm sorry. Put your right hand over your heart. Do I have a flag? Oh, here.
We'll put one up on the screen.
Oh, look.
Charles, if I could please share my screen.
Selene, you're ready.
Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag
To the flag
of
of the United
America
States
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So I think all of the staff members are here. Rob Hammond is excused for the day. Closed session talked about collective bargaining and no decisions were made. Do we have any changes to the order of business?
Yes, Vice President Wong, we do. We will be pulling consent item 3, our agreement with Care Solace, and consent item 4, our Perkins grant application, to place them in action. And they would be the first 2 items under educational services in action.
Those 2 items. All righty. Any other items? Any objections? Hearing none, we'll move forward. Like to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of May the 27th. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any
Hello.
questions? Any questions or comments? T?
Board Member Gilliland? Board Member Gilliland?
Yes.
Board Member Lockerbie?
Yes.
Board Member Travanti?
Yes.
Yes.
Board Vice President Wong?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Communication, board member reports. Maritza?
Yes, thank you, Vice President Wong. I wanted to report earlier today, I attended the 26th Annual Latina Action Day. The first time it was delivered virtually and spread over 3 days. Today's session was on the California's budget crisis. On the speaker panel was California State Treasurer Fiona Ma, Assembly Member Blanca Rubio, and Executive Director for California Budget and Policy Center, Chris Hoeni. It was very informative and very enlightening. I asked this specific question of the panel and received the response from Chris Hoeni. Governor Newsom has made significant cuts to the public education. The impact of these cuts are far and wide and will further contribute to the academic divide of our socioeconomically challenged student population. What is being done in Sacramento to ensure school districts are not starved and become insolvent under new COVID-19 socially distanced requirements? His response was, the legislature is pushing hard to avoid cuts to schools for precisely this reason. Governor Newsom is also trying to minimize the effects for schools, but in different ways through some complex financing mechanisms. But if there isn't federal fiscal relief, both the governor and the legislator are likely to have to put a budget in place where there will have to be cuts in schools. If the state is relying in federal fiscal relief, we may be looking at some major cuts. This is why approving the resolution during our May 27th school board meeting and getting that letter out to our U.S. congressional representatives was critical. So thank you to my fellow board members for voting unanimously at our last meeting for that resolution. We will know in the next week or so how things are going to shake out. It isn't too late for anyone listening tonight to contact them as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lockerbie?
Thank you, Vice President Wong. I vehemently condemn the murder of George Floyd that occurred on May 25th, 2020. In the words of Reverend Al Sharpton from Mr. Floyd's eulogy yesterday, what happened was not just a tragedy, it was a crime. Why does it matter what I have to say on this? Because when the protests stop and the reporters are gone, I will still be here. I sit on a board that governs our schools. And governing does not just mean advocating for equality for all, but also understanding equity. You can also advocate for equality, equity, and education by voting. Vote. If you're not registered, please do so. Fill out your census, it matters. Become familiar with what your legislators are doing. The HEROES Act passed the House about 3 weeks ago and is currently sitting in the Senate. It is a coronavirus recovery supplemental appropriations act that would provide almost $1 trillion to state and local budgets and would mean substantial financial help for MUSD. The bill includes things like emergency costs for child nutrition programs during the pandemic, promoting ability of voters to vote by mail, uniform availability of absentee voting to all voters, facilitating access to financial aid for recently unemployed students. I urge you to read the bill for yourself and research its implications. It's lengthy and complex, but if you agree with what is proposed, you need to reach out to our US Senate Majority Leader and express your support of the stimulus. The US Senate Majority Leader can be contacted at 202-224-2541. Why am I talking about legislation on the heels of my condemnation of the George Floyd murder? Because now your voices, now your actions will change the course of human events. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I would like to open tonight's meeting with welcoming Alejandra Bugarin, granddaughter of MSU cafeteria manager Mildred Ramos, into the MUSD family. Alejandra was born June the 3rd, weighing 8 pounds, to parents and former Monrovia High School alumni Crystal and Tony Bugarin. Look at that. That's what we need to keep in the back of your mind. Happy baby. All righty. Kathy, word from the superintendent.
Thank you, Board Vice President Wong, members of the board. We have a couple of things. First, I want to congratulate Teresa Dunn, our classified employee of the year, school employee of the year. Teresa is an extraordinary member of the human resources team and is not just competent, expert in her arena, but also always comes through and supports the larger team. If Dr. Jackson would like to say a few words, I know Dr. Jackson has had the pleasure of working with Teresa day in and day out and can tell us a little bit about the pictures here that we're seeing in front of us.
Sure thing, Dr. Tarosa. Thank you for giving me a moment of time to honor one of our classified members who I work closely with on a daily basis. This past Friday, similar to how we celebrated our students, whether it was through promotions and or our graduation ceremonies at the high school level, we took the opportunity to do a drive-by celebration parade, well attended by our CSEA negotiating team members, our personnel commission, our Board of Education representative, Celine Lockerbie, was able to attend that day. think we had about 20 cars that proceeded over to Teresa's house to honk our horns, hand off some balloons, as you can see, hand her a sign. Her true token of appreciation, which is a gorgeous plaque, is sitting in my office. But we have resigned ourselves to waiting till a more appropriate time where hopefully we can be in a boardroom with her family members. Her husband was actually there that day to at least be able to see the warm celebration that we were able to provide for her. I think, Kathy mentioned, she's a thoughtful individual. She handles each and every employee and their issues with care. She's proactive. She's a problem solver. She's a team player, knowledgeable and willing to share that knowledge if it's for the good of the district. Many people have come in who've said she is just kind, and I think that's ultimately what we believe is representative of our classified employee of the year. And so kudos to Teresa Brunn, and congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson, and thank you, Board Member Lockerbie, for representing so ably. We appreciate that.
It was fun, and I'm just so sorry that she didn't get to see as many balloons as started the parade. All left before the cars actually got to the parade, but it was great to recognize her.
Thank you. Also, today what I'd like to do is speak a little bit further about our planning for the next year, for the next school year. As I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we are going to look at a couple of different instructional models, taking into consideration some of the details, some of the logistical details that are so necessary to make sure that everybody is safe and we have opportunities for interaction with teachers. So we are looking at dual paths. One is creating an opportunity for students to meet with teachers at least daily through staggered starts and alternate schedules. Those are the things that we are mulling through right now to try and figure out what would work best for our students, and we'll be asking staff and parents for input in the coming weeks. We'll also offer an opportunity for distance learning, just to begin the year with distance learning. And we're so fortunate. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we have an amazing independent study program where our students can attend K-12 and often graduate and go to a four-year college directly from our Mountain Park Independent Study School. But the person who knows that program best and is its biggest advocate and most passionate cheerleader is our Director of Alternative Programs, Mr. Flint Furtick, who I believe is here. And if he could just say a few words about what independent study means and what that program would look like if a student were to enroll, I think it would be helpful. Mr. Furtick?
Good evening, Vice President Wong, members of the board, Dr. Terosian. Great to be with you guys tonight.
Can you, if I shut my webcam off, will you put yours on so we can see your?
I think mine was on. I think maybe it's up to Charles to add me at this point. Did that work?
Oh, there you go. Success.
All right. Now I'm really here. No, independent study has been around for really since the 1950s in the state of California, and it's existed in different forms. But right now, it has been really, really put to the forefront. And I want to just make sure that you guys understand a few things that are pretty simple, and most of you do. So forgive me if I'm repeating some things that you already have with your knowledge. Independent study comes in different forms. You hear the term distance learning. Distance learning is a form of independent study. Contractual learning is also a form of independent study. The reason independent study exists is to provide flexibility during times of need when students, families, and sometimes school districts, and in this case, all of them put together, have to create a different type of educational setting. The key with independent study is how tricky it is to make sure that you document and have auditable findings that are clean throughout your entire educational process. And that's not as easy as I think a lot of people understand. This last year with COVID-19, the state waived a lot of those requirements. Usually at the end of the year, David Conway and I sit down. We sit down with auditors who come to our site, sometimes as many as 2 or 3 days, and we extensively go through each student's books, records, attendance, why certain attendance was apportioned in certain ways. And we have to have probably about a binder-sized notebook for each student with all of that documentation ready in case the auditors need to see it. The reason why is we are not seeing these students every day, and we are billing the state for apportionments, or ADA. So last year that went away, but in the coming year, my understanding is, at least for now, and I know you guys know everything changes every time we turn around, but at least for now, it looks as if that auditable trail of work is going to be necessary again. So that could mean a couple of different things. We did take a district survey. We looked at the numbers on that survey, and there are a significant number of parents and students who are still uncomfortable coming back to school. A great opportunity to keep them enrolled in our district, serve their needs, and meet the capacity that they need is to simply use Mountain Park as the tool to do that. I've said this many times, and you guys know this. You've been to my campus. I have a dynamic, qualified, and amazing team that works with me there in that facility. They're ready to step up. They understand. We had a meeting at the end of the year, and basically I challenged them and said, look, we don't know what this is going to look like at the beginning of next year. I need you ready. And they have met that challenge, and they are completely ready to have more students than the contract would normally have at the beginning, all kinds of situations. They're ready to step up and take it on for the good of this community. And I'm very grateful to them for being willing to do that. They understand that there's a need. They understand the fears that our community still has. And they also, I think, understand the diverse needs of our students. I mean, listening to your comments earlier, Board Member Lockerbie, equity is key. And so many of our students come to us without equitable educational opportunities. And what we pride ourselves in at Mountain Park is building something for each individual student to try to make their educational access equitable. Many of you have had relatives and friends who've attended Mountain Park. You know what that's about, and you've seen the successes that we've had there with your students that you entrusted to us, and we appreciate that and all of your support. I just wanted the board. I know that our cabinet has reached out to me a couple of times, and I believe that they also have confidence in what we're doing. Our team is doing summer school right now, and they're in a really good place. So I'm open to questions, thoughts, anything else that you'd like to hear from me about.
Yes, Flint, I do have a question. So for those that are hesitant to send their children back in a distance learning environment or into a classroom with all the other restrictions and requirements that we will have to adhere to, the independent study does seem like a good option. My question is, if they start off the school year in an independent study format, can they shift over or matriculate back into a regular school environment in the school year? Or do they have to then maintain that format of independent study?
No, great question. And I want to be real clear because the law is very clear on this. No student can be forced into independent study, and no student can be forced to stay in independent study. Independent study is a program of choice. So parents and students will choose to be in independent study. They actually sign a contract saying that they're going to take that program and adhere to the regulations and those really kind of strict guidelines and laws that the program has. And then at any time, if it's not working for them, or in this case, and I really believe, Board Member Travanti, this will be the case, they'll start feeling safer. They'll start seeing that our schools are ready, and they'll matriculate back into their regular schools. In fact, we have many students who, because of illness in the family, a need to work, many of our students come from lower socioeconomic homes where they have to work for a while sometimes to help the family meet the bills. Sometimes that's 2 or 3 months. They work hard, and then they're able to rejoin their classmates at the comprehensive high school or middle schools or elementary schools, not in the working cases, but where they're able to help. Childcare also sometimes puts students in there, but they're able to travel back and forth freely. What we usually do, though, is we try to help them finish the credits that they're enrolled in so they don't go back with partial credits to the school that they'll be attending next. We want them to finish so they can go back with those credits finished and behind them.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you, Flint. And so as we promote this program, we want to make sure that we do address that because I personally have already been approached and I've talked about the independent study format, but their concern was, well, when we start there, can we go back to the classroom? And I'm really happy to hear that we can do that for them. So
something else that's interesting that really does, I don't think it gets out there enough. The Ed Code is very specific about our independent study school. The students who are there, who are eligible to participate in other programs, can participate in those programs. So we've had softball players, baseball players, cheerleaders, football, drama students, everything across the board. They may have a passion for robotics. And you can be, if you're a middle school kid, and you want to be in the Hippie Bots, and you can make that program and be a part of it, you're welcome to attend Mountain Park and all of those programs that Monrovia Unified School District is famous for, and that draw students to us are also available to those students. If you can't make the cheerleading squad or the football team or the marching band, then those same rules would apply to you that would apply to another student who might not make the cuts. But you're afforded the same opportunities to receive those programs.
Could you explain, all of the parents at this point in time are familiar with what distance learning is. Can you explain the difference between distance learning and an independent study program?
Yeah, so there really is, you don't want to look at it as a difference because distance learning is part of independent study. Independent study can be contractual learning. If you're not good at the technology or you don't have the resources, like I mentioned earlier, it's our job to scaffold and bring about a program that works for you. So in many cases, some students, they're better with contracts and with interaction with teachers on a more daily basis. And we try to subscribe to the mindset of the parents and students at the beginning and say, what's your son or daughter good at? How can we build a program that will assist them? And when they get to us, they may have certain strengths that we want to build on and certain things that we need to help build their skill sets. And so sometimes, I'll be completely honest, with higher level math, we recommend that you come more often. Because the truth is a lot of people are like, oh yeah, they passed integrated 1 in Baldwin Park, no problem. And we'll get them there and say, hey, we really have to help you build up some skills. Maybe over the summer you forgot some of it. And so we'll build a program where we get them either on campus or through venues just like GoToMeeting or Zoom, as we're all becoming so familiar with. We were doing that beforehand. Some of our teachers were posting lectures and posting them teaching virtually so that students could interact and be a part of that prior to this. So independent study really encompasses distant learning, but there are other options within independent study in case distance learning isn't for everybody. One of the things we noticed, and we had a lot of kids from this district, we lost a few of them were slower to get involved with distance learning. Could have been because of technology. I know the board's well aware of the efforts we made, really going out, knocking on doors, testing the internet, trying to get free internet to homes that couldn't afford it. An extensive effort was made by the administrative staff, teachers, and of course our district staff to meet those needs. But in certain cases, we had to adjust and provide instruction in a different way. And so we were proud to do that.
Great. Any other questions?
Some questions. Mr. Ferdig, you were right when you said that you and your staff are dynamic. You are absolutely dynamic. I feel it when I'm there. I see it in your kids. You mentioned a survey that went out that said, how do we want to come back? And, your staff said, okay, this might be more than we're used to, but we're ready to do it. That survey only We only heard back from about a quarter of our population.
Understood.
And I know that is more than you guys are used to. If we hear from more, or if all of a sudden at the last minute there are more at your doorstep, are you ready for that?
We are, and I say that confidently. I know that it may sound like, no, maybe not. No, I really believe that we are. And what we would do is we would be able to do this for this reason. And right now, this summer, I have my staff doing summer school. And what I have them doing is I have them testing all types of virtual teaching, virtual learning, different communications. With Parent Square, we have a great tool, and want to thank you guys for that. That tool is going to be key in communication with independent study. It allows us kind of a cleaner avenue to parent and student communication that we see as being cleaner and easier for us. But in addition, we have so much banked. And by banked, I mean I was just in Mr. Holman's summer school classroom this morning, and he has 5 or 6 things going on simultaneously. Using Nearpod over here with a certain group of students, using a taped Zoom that he has for another group of students, and then on the phone with a couple others texting him instructions, and as well as saying he'll meet people at the library to pass out paper contracts to them. Some of the students who are more comfortable doing that. One of the bonuses is we're getting folks from other districts who are coming in, and they're realizing how superior our program is to the distance learning that they were doing in their district prior to this. And we've already gotten some comments to our teachers from these parents going, thank you so much for reaching out, being so completely organized, and for putting my child to work with very rigorous and relevant curriculum so early. That's happened multiple times. One of them was one of our own directors, Mr. Glass. Actually called with some kind words to us about how on the ball he saw with his child who had to get some credit recovery with us. We feel like we're really on top of it. And that really is a credit to my staff. They saw this coming way back in February, and they took the time to continue to be engaged in developing their curriculum, developing their delivery. And I remember, late at night, getting calls from Mr. Ross, Mr. Holman, Mrs. Freitas, Mrs. Duff, with just loads of questions and ideas and thoughts. And a lot of it, kind of ended up by the wayside, but a lot of it went really well. And I have, 2 administrators, though they're paid for by the adult ed program. They're all-stars in Mr. McKendrick and Mr. Russell. Mr. Russell, his curriculum knowledge is as good as anybody's. I think anyone who knows him knows that. And then what I have with Mr. McKendrick is the strength of his bilingual background and his cultural understanding and his ability to get into homes and make communication available to parents who really need that, to understand the true tiny nuances of independent study. And so all of his bilingual communication has been so key to us as we've really reached out to many of those parents during the pandemic and been able to engage them when previously they weren't engaged. A lot of tools at our disposal because of the talent and quality of the staff that I'm fortunate to work with every day.
Thank you. I have one more quick question.
Sure.
So if a parent wants to enroll in distance learning at Mountain Park, how do they go about doing that? Where do they start?
Okay, it's a simple request. So all you have to do is you can call Mountain Park and we can line you up, and we will always work with the school they're coming from. So we have open communication. Most of the students you receive at Mountain Park are from our 2 middle schools and our high school in this district, as well as a couple that come from elementary school, but that's usually very small, has been in our experience. And I will say this, it's very simple to do it. You just simply make the request, we accept you. As soon as you're done or you've caught up or met the needs and you desire to go back, it's a very simple process for you to go back. One thing is we do like to send you back, like I said, when you're done or when there's a semester break, so you can kind of enter the classes there without disrupting the master schedule. One more thing that I think I have to say in complete honesty, we're not as strong in the kindergarten, first grade, even second grade area. The expertise that we have really starts in kind of third grade moving up. And I say that being careful because we have had some very, very young students. And if we were to move in that direction, I would rely very strongly on our district, on Dr. Kaiser, her office, and coaches to deal with those larger numbers of that grade level. We have very strong programs, third grade and up, but kindergarten, first and second grade, and Dr. Kaiser knows this. I've kind of shared that with her as a small concern, not by any means a deal breaker, but just that I and my staff would need support from and of course, the professionals that we have at those levels, I know could provide that in a way where we could also build programs that would be successful for these kids as well.
So, Dr. Therosian, can you ensure for the people that are considering Mountain Park K through 2, can you ensure that you are going to get Mr. Fertig that help and that extra support so that if there are people in those grades that do want to go to this dynamic school and take advantage of distance learning, they absolutely can in those grades?
Of course. That has been our commitment, and it is definite. I don't want anybody to hesitate K1 to enroll there, because we will provide the support that they need, and it really isn't any more than what we can do for them. So it is.
Dr. Kaiser and I have been meeting about this. The support's there. It's just we're building it at this point in time. If you were to walk onto my campus today, I could show you robust, rigorous, online, contractual, everything all the way. But the kindergarten through 2 is being built. And I have Miss Moraga and Mr. Holman both working on it with Miss Freitas right now. But it's kind of a work in progress. But the district, I know, has the team to help us there, and we're excited to add that to our repertoire of services.
So this is a lot of good information, Flint. I really appreciate it. I would like to see some type of either a one-pager or maybe a quick slide, maybe VMA can do this, on what independent study is all about here in our district, so that we can inform our parents and our community about this great option that we have within our district.
We've got a brochure that I can forward to you or to the superintendent to give to you so that you can see that. That was produced 2 years ago. That's still very current in what we're doing. And we can create another one too if you feel that there's a need.
I think it's more about publication and getting the word out to everyone.
Understood.
I think what would be helpful, since this has probably never been a more hot topic for all of the families looking for options, is we could put something on our district page to have a little bit better explanation of the pros and cons of whether it's the best thing for their particular student, of why they may consider it, and what the real difference is that they'll see on a regular basis. And I think that'll help people at least have an informed conversation with you.
Absolutely. We would welcome that.
Perfect. Any other comments or questions? Thanks, Flint. Have a great night.
Thanks for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Fertig.
Absolutely.
And that concludes my report.
All righty. Moving on to public comments. Do we have any public comments for items on the agenda?
There are none.
Do we have any public comments for items that are not on the agenda?
There are none.
In that case, we will go to informational reports, the proposed budget adoption part 2. Ms. Wu?
Yes, good evening, Board of Vice President Mr. Wong, Board of Education, and Superintendent Dr. Therosian, Cabinet, and the community members. On May 27th, the Business Service Department reported board about the governor's May revision. The governor May revision, the district will use that as the budget guideline for the 2021 proposed adult budget, which we will present for board for approval tonight. Next slide, please. We share with the board that the governor proposed the cross-border cut for the LCFF funding, and as well as a certain program cut which impact our district. Now, I want to also share with the board that for the local revenue, due to the school closure since March 16, we cannot rent our facility to the community. So as a result, we also experience a decrease for local revenue. The other part of local revenue is the interest rate. As board know that the federal government decreased the interest rate across the board. So as a result, the district will experience less interest revenue as a result of that. The good news is the district received another additional more money. So we normally budget more money as we received. As a result, we do see around a $47,000 increase. Next slide, please.
Connie, can you explain what MA?
MA is a Medicare Administrative Assistant money. Next slide, yeah. This is the 1920, which is the current school year revenue projection comparison. The first column means that when the board approves a second interim report, what is at that time the district projection for this year's total revenue versus as of right now tonight when we submit a board for approval for the adult budget for the next year, what is the current up-to-date projection? So the LCFF will experience $20,000 more projection because of the ADA increase, and the more money the additional received, and the adjusted minor down for the state income and the local revenue combination of the interest and the lease and the rental revenue loss. So total net is additional $43,000 more revenue this year compared with the second interim report projection. Next slide, please. The 2021 revenue projection is a total different story. This projection is according to the governor's May revision. The governor has the 10% cross-board LCFF reduction revenue. It is the net of the calculated COLA. So the negative 7.92% of COLA resulted district loss $5.2 million for LCFF money. So the federal income is for $910,000, which is as a result of the CARE money allocation. The district allocation is around $910,000, and we are required to apply starting July 1st. And according to rule regulation, the district expects to spend money by the December of this year.
So you said the CARE money, Connie?
Yes.
Pardon me. So that's the stimulus that we were already given, and that's what we have to spend by the end of this calendar year?
That's correct. Yeah. So we'll continue budget less for the interest rate. So as a result, you can see the difference compared with the second interim and as of right now. So the net that as of right now, we project that the total revenue for the district for next year is $4.3 million less. Next slide, please. So on the expenditure side, while we saw the revenue reduce because of school closure since March 16, our expenditure also there's some saving there. There's some saving for the staff level, where we no longer need sub costs because most of the learning is distance learning, and the extra hour and overtime still experience the saving. And also with school dismissal, our utility also has some saving there. And as required by distance learning, we also experience some additional cost for the device, for the internet connection, as well as the safety supplies for our staffs. Next slide, please. So this is also comparison for the expenditure side, compared with the second interim report projection versus as of right now. You can tell that the red bar is lower for the salary and the benefit, which means the saving from the without serve, less extra hours, no overtime. And then the supplies, the board approved the textbook adoption back to February. So we increased our projection for the supplies and the books that because of the adoption. The next one is the service and operation. As I mentioned that school closure, less utility, so less consultant service fee. So that reduction, the saving is represented here. So next one is the capital outlay. We spent some money to replace our district server room to make sure that our equipment will be kept in good condition. So that is the additional cost. We increase our projection accordingly. The contribution, and we will experience a little bit more. The reason why is the other program, the mainly is the food service program. Our food service department, they work very hard to provide the service for a meal. Unfortunately, since the school dismissal, our number of meal we provided to the students is only 50% capacity. So as a result, we will lost the meal reimbursed revenue from the state and federal. And on the same time that we are obligated to pay the employees. So as a result, the indirect cost from food service, it is difficult for them to contribute that this year. So that's why we did not project here. Next slide, please. So for the 2021 expenditure, and you will see that we will still experience the salary and benefit decrease. This is as a result of the state. For the May revision, governor also decreased the employers' contribution for both CalPERS and CalSTRS and pension plan. So as a result, there's a cost saving there. The other area is the books and supply and the service and expand. We reclassify certain expenditure. So you will see that the book supply is increased a little bit and the service and the operation is decreased a little bit. So on the other hand, the contribution, you also see that the contribution is decreased compared with the second interim report. Is because the governor's May revision project provide more revenue for the special ed program, and also the take out the PERS and the STRS contribution as part of the routine restricted maintenance calculation for 3%. So as a result, we will see a little bit less in this category. Next slide, please. So this is a multi-year projection, and we were able to have a positive balance when we finish this year. Because of the severe revenue reduction from the state, we will experience a negative balance for the next 2 years as of right now. So the state, it's a statutory requirement to adopt its budget next Monday. So if there's any changes, we will definitely, you will see that the multi-year projection will change too. Next slide. So this is a budget for the other program. As I mentioned in the report for back to May 27th, both our adult education, child development program will experience the budget cut from state. So our program director, Mr. Frank Fudix and Tom McFadden, they are working diligently with the business service department looking for the solution. So right now, as of right now, we project that the program will be balanced the budget for next year. The food service department, we project that school is go back and there we will have a full operation. Although the detailed serving station may be different, we may provide meal in the classroom instead of in the dining room. So we project the revenue as normal. And our expenditure will increase because with Ken in the military for over a year, we were saving his part of salary. Once he's come back, then we will budget his portion of salary accordingly. So that's why the expenditure will be high. And also the food cost increase too. So that's why we'll see the expenditure is a little bit higher. And we will continue experience a challenge for food service department. Not only us, it's cross board. A lot of school district has a challenge for this program. Although the ending fund balance is $54,000, I just want to bring board to attention. Out of $54,000, $40,000 is our stores goods. is our inventory in a different refrigerator in our different school site. So the fee-based program, this including the catering program, the international student program, and the Patrick's lease and the rental program. And as the facility closed, so Patrick is working diligently with the Fellowship of Monrovia to plan for the reopening the facility use. So we will definitely close monitor what it looks like, and we'll update the budget accordingly. Next slide. So I just want to remember the committee member and all the people here tonight that there's a cash deferral state proposed as a result of the May. This including this year. So we are waiting for the finalize on Monday, next Monday, which is June 15th, adopt its budget. So which means that this month, the state will not give us disproportionment, and there were deferral for April, May, June. And right now, we don't know how long that deferral will be. So we are planning work with the legal to address our cash needs in order to fulfill our obligation to pay our employee as well as our operations. Next slide, please. So tonight we will have a board adopt our budget for the 2021. And the district has already started conversation with the different bargaining union about the next year's health insurance. We had a 2.1 health insurance premium increase, which we did not budget. So I hope that we will solve this soon so that we can start in the open enrollment for next year. And we are required by within the 45 days, if the state adopt budget on time, then we will revise our budget. And personally, I plan to revise our budget several times next year because it's difficult to project the state revenue and the changes looks like inevitable. So as I mentioned, we're starting work with LACO, starting plan our trend, and then once we finalize, we will share with the board on my weekly update. And if we do need it, then we will submit for board for adopt a resolution to approve the join the trend issues. And then starting with the summer, the district fiscal years end in June 30th. So we're going to close our book, and by the mid of August, we're able to finalize the book closure process. So that will end my presentation. I would like to answer any question from the board or the communities.
Thank you, Ms. Wu. So there's two separate items on our agenda today that are very similar. The presentation you just gave, and then later on, we're going to adopt the budget itself. This particular presentation was good at showing how things changed and why things changed from one to the next. The key slides obviously are really where the deficits are and how substantial they are and where they're going to be. I'm not sure if the board wants to talk about these particular items now or cover it when we go to the approval of the budget. I do think it's important for everybody to understand that where we're at today is a placeholder. Come Monday, the 15th, is when we're going to find out where the state is at as far as what revenue is going to be looking like. Until then, we're really guessing as to what we can do. And Ms. Wu and her staff have done a fantastic job of showing where and how we got to things. But there's a good probability that we're going to have to be making a number of changes once this particular budget is approved. So I'm thinking that if we can hold our questions regarding this budget till we get to the adoption process, that way we can take all those items into consideration before we decide to pass the budget or not, if that's okay with the board.
I was just
That's
wondering.
fine, Brian. I would I would like to make one comment though, and that is it seems really silly to be putting this kind of information out there when we know that on the 15th there's going to be something different possibly come by. But the schedule for budget adoption and for approvals and revisions was set for normal times, and this is certainly not normal times, but no one has bothered to change the dates that are required for budget adoption. And so we have to meet certain state requirements for our budgeting process. And while this budget is certain to change, it's not that much different than any other year when the legislature and the governor negotiate what the final budget's going to be. But the main difference this year is we're looking at a $4 million difference. And that's significant. So unless there are major changes on Monday, this district will, and every other district in the state, will be required to look at major reductions in staffing, in offering, in what we can do for our students. So it's so important that the state legislature and governor come to an agreement and hopefully are able to whittle that $4 million reduction down to something that's manageable, because that's almost insurmountable cut to our budget. So other questions and specifics probably are appropriate for the later agenda item, but I wanted to get that out there, that this is necessary because of state law, that we pass this and we deal with this, but we're certainly hoping that there's some major movement on the budget front before the school year actually gets here.
Definitely. Ms. Lockerbie?
I wanted to know if, if you could go back to the orange slide that has the multi-year projection. I want people to see that. And I want people to understand that the numbers that are in brackets are a negative number or a deficit. So this is the multi-year projection for 2021, 21-22, and 22-23. So if you look at next year, which is in August, we're okay. But if you look at 21 and 22, we're down 4.8 as a projection. And if you look at the following year, we're down $12.7 million as a projection. So I hope we all see that and we all understand how potent and powerful that is and how difficult that's going to be to overcome. And also I wanted to ask, Connie, I'm sorry, I know you want questions at the other point, but I'm going to ask it now. The state budget comes out Monday, June 15th, correct? But taxes have been pushed to July 15th, correct?
That's correct.
So we're going to continue to see changes and changes and changes, but there could be a significant, substantial change after July 15th, correct?
Yeah, there's a possibility, definitely.
And of course, we'll make changes as changes come. So if we adopt this budget now, we're adopting the projection, correct? So it doesn't mean that we can't alter anything, we can't change anything, we can't deal with the changes that come from the state or anything that comes during this pandemic in terms of stimulus or anything like that, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is an interim budget. The projections we've made are based on the numbers that the state has provided to us, although these numbers are very dated, and we know that they're going to change again. As Ed pointed out, this particular year, this really is a technicality that we're required to make these submissions so we can move forward. These numbers are absolutely staggering. for people to make sure that they understand school districts are responsible for having a balanced budget, not for 1 year, but for 3 years out. And we have done that religiously. We are one of the more fiscally responsible districts in the area and have been for as long as at least as long as I've been on this board. Even through some of the worst years like 2008, we have not had a negative balance going into the second year. And to have a deficit 3 years out, although that's going to be really difficult to get to, of $12 million, almost $13 million on revenue of $48 million. It doesn't take a lot of imagination to see how things are going to have to go. Things are going to have to change at the state or federal level, or the state is going to be taking every school district in the state into receivership. And I can't see that happening. But as stewards of the community and the education of our kids, we need to take this seriously and take a hard look at where we're at. But as Ms. Lagerby pointed out, even though the state is supposed to come up with a budget on Monday, the state receives the vast majority of its income from state income tax and sales tax. And if they haven't even had an initial reading of where things are at, you can only imagine that they're going to be a plus or a minus on the initial number. Their initial number was a negative $54 billion. That number was come up before they extended the stay-at-home order for LA County. That number came up before any protests came about. So if your feeling is that those two events may have had a negative impact on the amount of sales tax or personal income tax that the state is going to collect, that's going to trickle down to school districts. Remember, school districts as a whole take about 28% of the state budget. So if the state budget takes another big hit, I think it is only reasonable to think that it's gonna trickle down in some manner. Hopefully not dollar for dollar on a percentage basis, but there's going to be an impact. We just don't know how the state did their initial budgeting. We always have, every single year, these numbers change. So that in itself is not a surprise to us. But I think the magnitude that we are likely to see may create some issues. So the community needs to know and understand we take this very seriously. And even though we don't have the numbers, we're already looking and talking on options that we may have to impose. So this is in black and white, a rough number to look at. But we can get into this a little bit more once we get to the adopted budget portion and see where we're going to go from there. And you can give us timelines at that point in time. Any other questions or comments for Ms. Wu? Hearing none, I'm going to go on to the consent agenda. We've pulled items 3 and 4. Are there any other changes to this agenda?
There are none.
I have a question. I'm
Sure.
sorry. I should have mentioned this before, but on the, can we pull the item
Anything
1?
you want, we can pull.
Thank you. Can we pull 1, obsolete textbooks and instructional materials, and move that to
Yes.
consent? Thank you.
Any additional changes? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Could we have a vote, please?
Board Member Lockerbie,
Yes.
Board Member Travanti,
Yes.
Board Member Gilliland,
Yes.
Board Vice President Wong.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Fantastic. So let's move on to item 1 under educational services, obsolete textbooks and instructional material. Dr. Kaiser, I'm going to guess? Or
Yes, sir.
Therosian?
No, it will be Dr. Kaiser. She'll be with us momentarily.
The reason I wanted that pulled, and I'm sorry it was at the last minute, but the reason that I wanted it pulled is because there have been issues before in the past from the community where the community has said there were perfectly good textbooks and we just threw them away. So I want to hear from you about what we're doing, why we're doing it, where it's going. So I appreciate you letting me pull this at the last minute and have you discuss it. I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
No problem. Good evening, Vice President Wong and board. I am happy to talk about the obsolete textbooks and the instructional materials. Our district went through an adoption process where our teachers studied the new materials for 2 years that are aligned to the FAIR Act and the new history social science framework. And these were our secondary teachers that had much to learn because much of the content had shifted. It's not that history has changed. History is still the same. What's changed is within the FAIR Act, we are now required to honor the contributions and teach the contribution of people groups that have in a long time been ignored. And those 3 people groups are LGBTQ people, our ethnic minorities, and our people with disabilities that have made significant contributions to our history and to creating the world as it is now, our positive contributions. And so with that, those lessons are to be integrated into this new, into the new textbooks. And so the social studies at the secondary level, grades 6 through 12, there were many changes. And even one of our dear teachers, Mrs. Van Dyke, went to one of the trainings and came back and she said, I'm going to have to study all summer long to learn these things because this is new. It's not that it's new in history, it's new in our books. And for our teachers to have command over it, they need the materials to go with it. So the materials that are on the obsolete list, they were adopted in 2006 and 2004. So they are 16 and 14 years old, respectively. With the obsolete textbooks, one of the questions that comes up in the community is, well, where do they go? They seem fine. Well, they are obsolete. They no longer meet the needs of our frameworks. And those that can be sold to second source book sourcers are sold, and the others are donated. And so the books are disposed of from our district, but they're put to good use in other formats. And so this was our process. And then the question may come up, well, if the framework changed, why aren't we looking at elementary? As we looked at the elementary lessons and the elementary additions, there are additions that need to be addressed there too. The history social science teachers hadn't had a new adoption for 16 years. And so they they're only dealing with that one textbook. Our elementary teachers have had several different adoptions they've had to deal with because they teach all the subjects. So it was our decision, because the language arts adoption is still relatively new. They're still doing much professional development around that we would look at that. Next year, we would begin to look at science and then loop back around to history because our elementary teachers teach it all. And in the meantime, our instructional specialist will be creating some lessons from open source to splice in for our elementary students. At the elementary level, the books are not as dense as they are at the secondary level. And so these were all factors in our decision. In terms of careful planning, again, I want to reiterate that our teachers went through 2 full years of intense study of the framework, and we're very proud of the work that they did. So this is the adoption cycle. We had been without new textbooks. Usually it's a 7-year cycle. And because we went through our 2009 economic downturn, there were no books adopted during that period. And so we find ourselves in this period again, where we're really going to have to look hard at alternatives to new textbooks.
And these books were adopted before we had these particular financial issues, correct?
These books the pilot and the study was done for the last 2 years, and then these were board adopted in February with no clue that this was going to be happening.
This may be our last book adoption we have for a little while, but it always amazes me that we continuously have to revise books from independence to 1914 because so much has changed in that period of time. But that's another story. So thank you very much. The bottom line is we don't throw books away. All books that can be sold are sold. Books that cannot be sold are donated. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Does this particular item require a motion?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any additional comments or questions? Hearing none, could I have a vote, please?
Board Member Travanti,
Yes.
Board Member Gilliland,
Yes.
Board Member Lockerbie,
Yes.
Board Vice President Wong.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Item 3, general service agreement between Addiction Treatment Technologies, Care Solace, and Monrovia Unified School District. Dr. Kaiser?
Yes, the Board of Education is requested to approve a general service agreement with Addiction Treatment Technologies, Care Solace, for a district license to access an online platform for caresolace.com for a term of 1 year from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. The Care Solace service has been beneficial in our district in serving the community mental health care needs, which, by the way, includes staff members, students, and families, by providing extra support and follow through for our site counselors and administrators. Once a client is referred to the concierge of service, the counselor or administrator is kept in the loop with the client's follow through and services. Care Solace recently created a service dashboard so our staff can see the services for our kids in real time. Monrovia USD experienced a large increase in the use of Care Solace in the month of March and April. The number of anonymous searches jumped from 9 in February to 37 in March and 52 in April. That's nearly a 600% increase. And these are people that are seeking mental health services, and Care Solace is the concierge that connects them.
Thank you. Do I have any comments or questions from the board?
I just want to say I'm truly grateful to have this partnership with Care Solace that we have developed over time. They have really done a great job, and obviously the need is there. And I really appreciate the recent communication that we put out, letting the public know, our students know, that these services will continue through the summer. So again, I'm really appreciative of this service and this agreement we have.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Could we have a vote, please?
Board Member Gilliland,
Yes.
Board Member Lockerbie,
Yes.
Board Member Travanti,
Yes.
Board Vice President Wong.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Fantastic. Item number 4, career technical education application for 2020-2021 funding, the Carl D. Perkins Grant.
Yes, the Board of Education is requested to approve the career technical education application for the 2021 funding school year of the Carl D. Perkins Grant. The Perkins has a new requirement, and the requirement is a needs assessment. It is based on required performance indicators and our own self-evaluation in the area of career and technical education. It now looks at our graduation rates, our completion of technical pathways, students passing the Smarter Balanced exams, and exams such as this. The career technical education has 11 elements for a highly qualified CTE program. Some of those elements are leadership, teacher preparation, internships, and certification. Based on that, Monrovia came up with some goals utilizing Perkins funding to address our areas of continued improvement and growth areas. And some of those examples are access to industry-based internships. One of our teachers, Kevin Mercado, has been given extra hours in the summer for industry to help with industry recognized certifications. We have industry recognized certifications that are being offered in auto, CPR, Adobe, which is a computer program, and CT programs such as this. Extra hours for teachers to prep students on the weekends for exams. The Perkins funds will also pay for the admission for the students to take these exams. The funds will pay for marketing, professional brochures, so the community knows about the programs for our students so that we have more students enroll. This has been a very vibrant program for our school to have career technical education. This was the genesis of our career and technical education programs.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
I have a question.
Please.
Doesn't this grant associate the classes that are offered with the current job numbers?
Yes. With the Perkins grant, we are required to develop those pathways that the jobs report show that there are job needs, so that when the students graduate or from high school or when they go on to college and they continue in these pathways, that there is a guarantee of employment on the other side. This grant is very much associated and connected to jobs on the other side.
One of the, probably one of the most questions that I get from the public are, why don't they teach this anymore? And I think it's important that they understand that the classes that we offer are tied to this grant, or these particular ones are tied to the grant, and those are tied to the job report. And I think that explanation is very important so that they understand why we're teaching what we are teaching, or why we're not teaching what we're not teaching right now.
And along with that, Board Member Lockerbie, that is true of the Perkins grant, which funds the courses in high school that are career orientated. Likewise, in our adult ed, we are required more and more to have strands that lead straight to jobs. And that is governed by the same principle that those pieces are funded because those students get jobs when they leave our programs. And that's why we're seeing less of the arts and crafts kinds of programs being funded through adult ed and through Perkins, because there's simply no funding for that in these grants. Those programs have to be funded by other pots of money that are not existing anymore.
I appreciate the explanation. It's unfortunate that there isn't the money for that. But it's important to know why you're doing what you're doing, why we're doing what we're doing. So thank you for the explanation.
Ms. Travante?
Yeah, and I just wanted to make a comment. I know that it's working because last year when we attended the adult school graduation, Many of those could not make the graduation because they went immediately into jobs. They were already hired and ready to go the minute that it was the last day of school. So I know that the programs are working and these grants are working.
Any other comments or questions? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Have a vote, please.
Board Member Lockerbie?
Yes.
Board Member Travanti?
Yes.
Board Member Gilliland?
Yes.
Board Vice President Wong?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. On to item J, action items. Number 1, the adoption of a COVID-19 operations written report. Dr. Kaiser.
Good evening. We have a little bit of a slideshow that we're going to share with you on the COVID-19 operations report. Before we start the slideshow, I'd like to explain the report and why we have this report. It's a new report that we've never had before, obviously, and where it comes from and where the requirement comes from, because the dots don't connect very clearly. The COVID-19 operations written report is actually what we are being required to do in lieu of an LCAP submission. That's what the surprise is that it doesn't have a lot to do with the LCAP. But within it, we are asked to look at what we've done for our students that are in our 3 target populations. And we're asked to look at the operations of the district. How did we go from having all students in class to having all students at home? What did it take? What were in the operations that cost our resources, were cost to our resources to make that happen? And then how did we do? So this is a very brief report, and we have been required to present this report and have this report approved in the same board meeting that the budget that Connie presents is also approved. So that's why it's coming tonight. So we'll go ahead and take you through this brief presentation. Okay, the programs, distance learning began on March 16th. We closed down on the 13th, started on the 16th. And to make that happen, technology was distributed, teachers were trained, and they began to teach remotely immediately. And where technology was lacking, packets were distributed. We even had one principal that counted up how many students were MIA. She had 9 students. She delivered packets to their homes. And so our district took it very seriously to make sure that learning materials were delivered to every single household. Support for teachers and families was offered each week through training, newsletters, office hours, and instructional specialist coaching. Principals did walkthroughs like they would on their campus, but they did it digitally, looking in on the lessons that were being delivered to their students in their buildings. And instruction remained standards-based. Next slide. So our English learners, foster youth, and low income, we offered one-to-one session for students that had special needs, and our counseling services continued. We had small group counseling, we had one-on-one counseling, we had counseling that was monitored through Care Solace and by administrators and school counselors. And you know, our intern program that was started with our universities, those programs continued also. They were monitored, and the university interns were delivering counseling services and small group social emotional learning services remotely with students in need. English language development lessons continued for our English learners, and our intervention teachers continued to deliver the small group instruction via web meetings. Next. Charles will talk about how the access to technology and those needs were covered.
So we had to figure out how many Chromebooks we potentially needed to prepare, possibly how many hotspots to order. We did a survey requesting families to share their technology's needs, to find out how many computers, did they have an internet connection, did they have a laptop. We had Chromebooks distribution at several schools. We distributed over 1546 Chromebooks. We also received ordered hotspots. We distributed about 20 hotspots. But we also know that there are a lot of families without internet because they also took advantage of what Giggle was offering for free, as well as Spectrum. And very recently, Giggle told me that they have 80 people sign up for the free internet between Arcadia and Monrovia. So we do have a lot of families out there without internet connection. We also put up a technology support line, and they are able to access it in English and Spanish. They just press 2 for Spanish. And I think Hugo is having a fun time on those rare occasions where he has to practice his Spanish and see how good at it he is. And we also have getting started videos on our district website. So the technology has been very busy. And even today, a couple of days ago, we got a request for a hotspot due to basically loss of income. So the work is not done. We still have families out there that are in need.
Next.
Next slide.
Okay, distance learning. This is a little summary of the distance learning and what it looked like. Video conferencing and digital content began right away, and we have 2 instructional specialists that set up a digital learning platform for parents, teachers, and students with many, many resources. We also had within the digital learning platform a very robust platform for special ed families and resources galore for the families to be able to access things to meet their needs, whether they were special ed or whether they were general ed. And we really give a lot of thanks to Jennifer Johnson for setting up our special ed with her team, and then Chad Miller and Jennifer Malgin for the work that they did with the general ed teachers. The teachers worked within an instructional framework to establish routines for synchronous and asynchronous remote learning with a blend of whole class, small group, and instructional videos and online assignments. So they were meeting with their students in real time at times, and then at times they would videotape a lesson and then put the videotape online so students could access it whenever they needed to. We utilize the Google Suite platform for a universal platform in Monrovia Unified School District so that we have a common language in our district when we talk about technology and applications. The teachers and the administrators continued to work in their professional learning community format, the PLC. And I have to tell you that the board has been so gracious in supporting the PLC work over the last year in our district. In fact, Board President Hammond attending the conference with the administrators to see exactly what is this and what is its value. I have to tell you that the administrators over and over again talked about those small learning communities of the teachers are what carried them through something where they needed support. Assessment and feedback were provided so students knew that their own progress, their own learning progress, and that feedback was given to the students. Next slide. And Connie's going to talk a little bit about the meal service.
Yes, the provided meals to our needy kids in our community become a critical part of COVID-19 operation. And starting March 16, the first day of this school dismissal, up to June 3rd, the last day of 1920 school year, the district will provide 167,235 meals. Those meals are provided during the hour of 9 to 11. And we provide grab-a-go and then congregate meals to our students. And starting this week, we continue our summer feeding program. Although the summer feeding program location is at High School Clifton Santa Fe and Viral CLC, but we provide the same number of meals to our communities, students at the same level since the school dismissal. So we had additional nurse visit each cafeteria, make sure that we follow the COVID-19 rule regulation and the local health department protocols. We provide the safety supplies to all our cafeteria workers and cafeteria managers, including the gum, the facial shield, the gloves, and the facial masks. So we educate them the importance to protect themselves as well as the community and the students. Next slide, please. And even during the meal delivery, they exercise the social distance with the 6 feet, and the order of the meal and the take of the meal, there's 6 feet apart, and they are working and continue working together. And some of the kitchen, if they're needed, will also disinfect, clean our cafeteria. And also we want to thank the board and to visit the cafeteria meal distribution when the program first started.
Next. And then supervision. The schools provided families with schedules and routines for learning with meaningful academic and social learning opportunities. The students were offered whole class and small group as well as social emotional check-in. The Monrovia Unified School District has surveyed families to determine if there is a need for child supervision and is looking to have a plan in place to support all families with their child care needs as we move forward into the next school year. And this concludes our report. Next slide. Any questions?
How often are you going to have to provide this report? Is it going to be an annual report? Is this a one-time deal or quarterly? Or who knows?
All we know is that we were asked to do this in conjunction with the passage of the budget, and that it needed to be done before July 1st. And this was replacing what we would have been doing with our LCAP right now. The legislature has said that we would just continue with our same LCAP goals and the budget arranged the way that it was, but making some cuts here and there to accommodate the lack of funding for next year. And then we have learned that we're being asked to rewrite the LCAP and to have that prepared with the regular regulations by December. So as far as I know, this is the only time that this report will be required. I do believe that this is a good report in terms of reporting to our community in one report what all of the lenses did to accommodate the COVID-19 school closure and the change that we went through, to have it comprehensive in one place. And so if it would please the board, we would certainly bring a report like this back and report out on these features again in the future at a time when you would like it.
I think it would be helpful if it continues. You know, this is one of those things where it's a fluid situation, obviously, and I really would hate to take away from your time. The information was fantastic. But at the same time, I don't know that I want to spend a lot of times getting reports when staff may be stretched extraordinarily thin in the coming days. But we'll see how things go. I mean, this is a great template for providing information. I think it was very useful.
Now that we've done it once, this isn't a hard one for us to update in the future and to bring back more information. Perhaps in December, along with the LCAP, we could report on these features again.
Fantastic. Any other comments or questions?
T, could you
Just want to compliment Dr. Kaiser and her staff on putting this together. It is a good report, a lot of good information, and it really summarizes many of the things we did. I don't think it covers the breadth of how wide and how deep this affected our district, but it certainly is a great summary, and thanks for putting all this together, Dr. Kaiser.
Ms. Lockerbie?
T, would you mind going back one slide, please? So when you were talking about supervision, Dr. Kaiser, you mentioned this survey again. Again, I'm concerned with how few people have responded to this survey. And if you're looking at, if you're forecasting, and if you're forecasting what sort of child supervision are we going to need, and what is the plan we need to put in place, if it's based on that survey, that's not an effective and efficient, that's not a real number. I know you know that. I know you can't control who fills out the survey and who doesn't fill out the survey. And I am repeating this so that maybe someone else hears it and says, what's this survey? Let me fill out that survey. But how are you handling the knowledge that this projection is not a real number?
The first projection that we got from the first survey, we did get about 22% when it was all said and done of our community, and it was pretty well dispersed across the schools at the number of 22%. That was a large enough poll for us to do a forecast. It doesn't give us a real number. It gives us a percentage and a trend. And that's what we were looking for at that time, because we didn't know if 100% of our families were going to look to come back to school, or 100% were going to say, no, we need to have distance learning. We know now that we're going to have a mixed bag, and the survey helped us to see that and to be able to really rest in the fact that we have a mixed bag of opinion of how students should come back to school. It did follow our predictive intuition. One of the next steps will be to actually begin to register students into one of the formats of learning. And when those registrations are conducted, that's when this notion of who needs childcare is going to come also. And so that the next survey will be much more personal, and it'll be much more direct in terms of, please sign up for one of these. This is what we're going to be moving forward with, because we only have about 10 weeks before we have children back in our schools again. And we do have a task force that Dr. Tarosian is creating that will begin meeting next week. We have an elementary task force and a secondary task force, and those groups are going to start small and then gathering information from their stakeholder groups to bring it back in a very short amount of time. And we will have representation from our village program on the task force, so that we're not forgetting that we have families that must have childcare, and we need to see what that's going to look like. We don't know what that will look like yet. But we are planning for it. So Board Member Lockerbie, I hear your comment, and I agree that we need to have very detailed information. We're planning on having that within the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Do I have a motion?
I will.
Celine, was that a second?
Yes.
Thank you. Can we have the vote, please?
Board Member Travanti,
Yes.
Board Member Gilliland,
Yes.
Board Member Lockerbie,
Yes.
Board Vice President Wong.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Item 2, proposed adopted budget in public hearing for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. Since there's a public hearing, I guess I should start the public hearing first. So I'd like to open the public hearing at 8:45. Are there any comments or questions from the audience? Do we have any speakers? T?
There are none?
Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak? Hearing none, I'm going to close the hearing and move to discussion of the adopted budget. Ms. Wu?
Yes, Vice President Mr. Wong, and as I put in the last two board meeting, we prepared the 2021 the district budget and we submit for board adoption. This is a unique budget because of the severe cut the revenue from the state, and I think that with the leadership of the board, and we will go through it, and we'll work together to make sure that we tie our budget and make sure that we will be very prudent to go through these challenges. And I will entertain any questions from the board.
Thank you. Is there, if you can put up the 3-year projection, that orange slide that was requested earlier, that's probably going to say everything there is to say about this budget. There you go. This budget is a placeholder. I mean, we need to be real about what's going on. This budget is a placeholder, and we have a lot of unknowns that are going on that there is no practical way for us to move forward till we know what the answers are. And that is, this first step is Monday, to understand what the budget is that the state is going to pass. And then at a point in time in the future, what their adjustment is going to be once they see what their revenues are. But until then, the board is very well aware of the challenges that are in front of us. The first and foremost is in the next 30 days or so, we will be putting together a game plan for what at least the first semester is going to be looking like, whether students are going to be attending full-time or through independent study or distance learning like we've done for the last 3 months, or highly likely a hybrid model in some case to reduce the amount of social interaction or contact within the school sites. But each one of those plans has a tremendous number of variables that go with it and expenses that are going to go with it. Questions that need to be addressed that we're considering now, things like childcare and the cost of hotspots and training and software and support and all of these things that we just don't know about yet. We are trying to get our arms around it. I think the community needs to know and understand where other districts around us have been laying people off for a while. We have not. And the reason is because we have planned so well in the past, and all staff, all stakeholders have been engaged to the point in which we were not required to do so. But when you look at these numbers, things may change. Things may change. It's important to understand one of the biggest items, I just spoke about expenses, possible expenses. Our revenue is a big concern as well. Our district budget is made up of 97% of something called average daily attendance, or ADA. 97 to 99%, depending on the year, of our budget is from that source. A drop in attendance, average daily attendance for this district of 1% is the equivalent of $500,000 approximately. $500,000 for a drop of 1%. So if the state continues to require we count students in the way that we always have, you have to ask yourself whether you think attendance is going to drop, or when there's a flu outbreak, whether it's going to drop more than normal, or as we are taking extra precautions in monitoring every child as they're coming in and employee to see whether they're sick or not. And if there's any question, we're going to be safe. Safety is our number one concern. So if we're taking all of these precautions, in my opinion, there's a high probability that our ADA, our average daily attendance, is going to drop in traditional manner. Now, there's a number of suggestions in which are in front of the state to alleviate this and to address distance learning, because that's really difficult to track as well. But that's something we need to keep our eye on. It's not just how much money they say they're going to give to us, but how they're going to give it. And that's a critical item. That may be the most important thing that we see in next week's budget, in my mind, is to see if they're going to change that funding formula. There is a silver lining to this thing, and that is there's no chance that the state can continue business as usual, or they're gonna have to run every school district in the state. That we are one of the most fiscally responsible districts around, and I've never seen such an issue before. So it is a guarantee that the vast majority are far worse than we are. So I'm comfortable and confident that there will be some kind of a resolution eventually. But until we get there, we need to continue to be prudent and continue to make the hard decisions and continue to talk to the employees and the parents and the students to find out what works best, what keeps people the safest. And so I don't want people to get too lost in today's budget, because honestly, it has very little meaning other than to show us that there are issues, and we are aware of them, and we will be addressing them. And more importantly, everything we're doing is student first. And I don't want people to lose track of that. Our primary goal and objective is always students first. So we will be working hard. Staff is already working insane hours to look at the various possibilities of how to make this thing work. So please be patient. And for the people who have questions, please don't be afraid to ask. And as Ms. Lockerbie pointed out earlier with the surveys, this is our best tool to understand what's important to you. If you don't let us know, we may overlook it. So please take the time. You're not going to be bothering us. I've heard this 1,000 times. I don't want to bother you. Please let us know what's on your mind. If you're uncomfortable talking to people, send an email to the district office. Whatever it is, please let your thoughts be known. This is the most critical time that I can imagine. And with that, does anybody else have any comments on the subject?
Well, I know a lot of people are reaching out to me and saying, when are we going to find out? When are we going to know what's happening? And it's tied to so many different things. And Dr. Thorosian has her task forces put together that are working on it. We need to get information from everybody else, and we need to wait for the budget to find out how much money we have and how we're going to structure things. So I know everyone wants to know what's going to happen when we go back to school, but step by step, when we're progressing through it, and waiting for the budget and waiting for any revisions after that will really help to solidify some ideas and some structures. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Can we have a vote, please?
Board Member Gilliland,
Yes.
Board Member Lockerbie,
Yes.
Board Member Travanti,
Yes.
Board Vice President Wong.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Item 3, declaration of need for fully qualified educators. Dr. Jackson.
Yes, Board Vice President Wong, members of the board, Dr. Tarosi and cabinet, members of the community. The Board of Education is requested to adopt a declaration of need for fully qualified educators for the 2020-2021 school year. This is an annual routine request, which allows the district to hire or retain teachers holding credentials, but need to obtain English learner authorizations or bilingual authorizations in either our specialized programs for Mandarin or Spanish.
Any comments or questions? I have a motion.
I have a question. Dr. Jackson, you briefly mentioned that this is an annual process that we go through. Why? Do we have to in order to retain or maintain?
We don't have to. It gives us flexibility. It's mostly with hiring new candidates. We may not be hiring new candidates based on the budget, but it just gives us flexibility throughout that process.
Well, and that's basically why I'm asking for some more clarification about this, because our last slide was about a $4 million deficit for our budget next year. And then this slide is declaring a need for fully qualified educators. So I just wanted to have you, if you can, just very briefly, as you did, explain why we're making that declaration right now.
Yes, and as just for a little bit more detail, specifically as an example in our Mandarin program, that program is very specific in the need for a specific credential, specifically Mandarin. There are not a significant amount of candidates out there that may have the additional bilingual authorization. That program continues to grow. So again, it gives us a little bit more flexibility in being able to hire for that particular position. That would be one good example.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Could I get a motion, please?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Thank you. Can I have a vote, please?
Board Member Lockerbie,
Yes.
Board Member Travanti,
Yes.
Board Member Gilliland,
Yes.
Board Vice President Wong.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Item 4, approval of line-wise web content filter with Borderland Security. Charles?
Good evening, Vice President Wong, board members, cabinet members of the community. The district would like the Board of Education to approve the purchase of line-wise Family Zone web content filter so that we can begin testing and deployment this summer. This upgrade will work hand in hand with our new internet connection coming this July and will prepare us for the increased number of devices that could potentially be in our network, as well as the anticipated increase of bandwidth due to applications like video conferencing, which is becoming more widely used and almost a norm, and the increasing amount of information out there that are increasingly becoming multimedia based. This web filter will also allow the district to filter our devices regardless of where they are, whether they are on campus, at a local cafe, or at home. This would be in the amount of $40,184.13 for a period of 3 years. Any questions?
So is this software filter based on when a person logs in? Is it on the actual machine itself? Is it something that can be bypassed? How sticky is this?
So how this works is that for district-owned machines, we will basically is pushed out as an app. So a Google Chromebook, for example, it is attached to our Google admin, and we push it out centrally via an app. And they cannot wipe it unless they try to wipe out the whole machine. And if they wipe out the whole machine, we know that that machine has not been ported in. So we know that something could potentially be wrong. It's also installed as an app as well for Macs and PCs. So basically, when they are out and about, it's an app that our servers control that cannot be installed unless they actually try to wipe out the whole system. That's how the system works. And because the app is installed when they are at home, it basically gets filtered in the cloud. And when they are on campus, it gets filtered on site.
And this is for both students and staff.
That is correct. This is for both students and staff.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Did we already have a content filter?
Yes, we do. Last year, we actually asked the board to approve a 1-year renewal, and we are up for renewal in September again. And because we knew we needed to increase bandwidth, we needed to upgrade our box, our box that's on site. So when I got a quote for it, it was about $65,000 roughly. At that point, I realized it's probably time to shop around. I looked at various products, got various quotes, many in the 60,000 range. Line-wise came in at $40,000. Did some reference checks and got pricing from a vendor on the under a piggybackable contract, and that's where we're at now. So this will save us money in comparison to what it would cost us if we were to just stick with our current web filter and just upgrade the box that's on site.
I can't remember the name of the sort of almost like a grant money that we get for technology. It comes out of our
E-rate?
E-rate.
yes.
Probably talking about E-rate.
Can we pay for this with any E-rate money?
E-rate does not pay for content web filtering. Actually, E-rate requires us to have content web filtering to get E-rate dollars.
Is there any place else we can find $40,000?
Well, not that I know of, but as of right now, technology actually budgets around $12,000 per year. So that's about, so if you were to divide 40,000 divided by 3 years, it'd be about 13.3 thousand. So it's increasing our budget by just a couple thousand. So we already are very closely budget for this on an annual basis.
Any other questions? Have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Can we have the vote?
Board Member Travanti,
Yes.
Board Member Gilliland,
Yes.
Board Member Lockerbie,
Yes.
Board Vice President Wong.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Item 5, resolution denouncing racism and discriminatory acts in America and affirming Monrovia Unified School District's commitment to tolerance, understanding, and diversity in schools. Dr. Throsian?
Thank you, Vice President Wong, members of the board. We are in historic times as well, and this board has stood up for equity, for justice, and this resolution reaffirms that. It now is certainly a time where the words of injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere is so appropriate. And so this resolution affirms the district's commitment to promoting equity and to promoting a strength-based approach to learning and against racism and promoting diversity in our schools.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Could I have a motion, please?
Oh, I have a comment. I'm trying to actually get to it because we didn't read it. I am confused as to why in this resolution denouncing racism and discriminatory acts in America and affirming our commitment to tolerance, why we would reference another resolution and also reference the time that we voted on that resolution. And the paragraph reads, the MUSD Board of Education has each year since 2014 and as recently as April 22nd, 2020, passed a resolution condemning man's inhumanity to man, citing the Armenian genocide, the Holocaust, the Rwandan genocide, and the atrocities perpetuated by ISIL against religious and ethnic minorities in Iraq and Syria as only 4 examples from recent history that depict the atrocities committed by man. So I don't understand why we would mention that in a resolution where we're talking about something different. It doesn't make us sound woke, especially when that other resolution, for the Armenian genocide, condemning the atrocities of the Armenian genocide and man's inhumanity to man, doesn't mention the genocide of the Native American people. Dr. Throsian, please make a note when that resolution comes back up. I'd like to talk to you about it because I don't have a problem with it just being about the atrocities of the American genocide. But if we're going to include other things, we can't forget the atrocities that Americans have committed. And the second thing that I wanted to mention is this resolution doesn't have any teeth. It says we're resolved to do this, but it doesn't have any teeth. It doesn't say how. It doesn't say what we're going to do beyond what we're already doing. And, you know, students that don't attend preschool come into kindergarten with hundreds of thousands of fewer words to their in their vocabulary. Children that do not attend preschool are historically Black and brown and poor. When Black and brown children enter kindergarten without having had the opportunity to attend preschool, and they're behind in all of these words, they are behind and they are frustrated. And in their frustration, they act out. And in acting out of frustration, they are disproportionately and inappropriately punished. Or they have a disability that is misdiagnosed as a behavioral issue. And these behavioral issues go into their chart. And these behavioral issues continue throughout their educational career because they started the very beginning behind. And so when they get into middle school or when they get into high school and some sort of issue comes up and an issue comes up that might lead to a suspension or an expulsion, and it might come to a school board, and the school board says, well, let me see their file. And they look in their file and they say, well, this child's been a problem since kindergarten. Of course they should be expelled, or of course they should be suspended. And these children are historically and statistically Black and brown. And we know this because we have been studying this since the 1940s, and we have been tracking specifically preschool since the 1970s. So I propose that we have this resolution, first of all, take out that paragraph referencing our other resolution and adding to it that we will be resolved to passionately and persistently advocate for free, universal, all-day preschool. Because the absence of that is the beginning of institutional racism and discrimination. And if we can advocate for that, even during this pandemic, when we're looking at a dastardly, terrible budget, even during the pandemic, if we can look at that and if we can passionately advocate and speak for getting free, universal, all-day preschool, then we make a difference. And that's what I would like this resolution to say. And I propose that we make those amendments and bring it up at our next board meeting.
Any other comments or questions? Is there a wish to table this resolution until the next meeting?
Just as a point of clarification, Vice President Wong, could we make those changes today and pass the resolution?
No.
Okay.
No.
Why not?
Because the public hasn't had an opportunity to review those and comment on them. If they were sitting here in the meeting and had the opportunity, that would be one thing. But I don't believe that would be proper to change this to advocate for free preschool without giving the public an opportunity to comment on it and an opportunity to preview it before we bring it to the board.
I'm not positive about that, but you know what? I look at it this way. If we can table it, it's just another opportunity for us to let our population, let our district know where we stand on these items. It's definitely not going to hurt us by repeating it again, and to take an extra week or so to make sure the language is something that we're all comfortable with and may want to edit and add as well. So if it's okay with the board, then I would suggest tabling it till the next time around. And Dr. Throsian, if you can schedule it for the next board meeting and circulate the revised resolution beforehand, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Moving on to item 6, pending board issues. Board of Education will receive status information. Do we have status and information, Dr. Throsian?
Each of you have status and much information. This document simply updates the information that we've had to date, and there really is nothing different. You'll notice that it's gotten shorter and shorter every meeting, and in July, it will become lengthy again when we put in all of the items that we have scheduled throughout the year.
Does anybody wish to add or subtract to our existing list? Look at what an easy job you have. Nothing. All righty, moving on to old business. Our next board meeting will be Wednesday, June the 24th at 7 p.m., which may or may not be in person. That's something I think we're going to have to discuss to see what is appropriate. I am sure before that point in time, we will have a special meeting to discuss what we hear on Monday and what our next steps are. I'm sure we'll have a number of meetings that will be coming up that are not regularly scheduled to discuss how we're going to open our schools, what it's going to look like, what it's going to entail, and listening to the various concerns of the task force that Dr. Throsian has put together so we can make some informed decisions on how to best roll this out for all parties involved. New business, summer school, K-8, July 6th to July 31st, online. The high school, June 11th to July 15th, also online.
That's tomorrow.
Yeah. Any additional comments on that, Dr. Throsian, that you want to talk about summer school?
Well, this is yet another one of our new endeavors with online summer school. We have already been with our extended school year online program has already been in place for a few days, and things seem to be going well, and we're hoping for the best. This next one, and then of course the high school will begin in July.
Sounds good. I'd like to adjourn the regular Board of Education open session meeting. We would like to close tonight's meeting in memory of Carolyn Kudlata, sister-in-law to board member Ed Gillen and sister to his wife, Connie. Carolyn passed away recently from complications of cancer, surrounded by family. Our thoughts and prayers are with their family at this time. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Take care. See you soon.
Oh, wait, aren't we talking about something?
Oh, did you? Were we